I get you. Yeah. You have to draw. It's kind of like writing with someone that has no input.
Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth?
Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
Can we get serious now?
One thing that did happen during the 60s was some music of an unusual or experimental nature did get recorded and did get released. Now look at who the executives were in those companies at those times. Not hip young guys. These were cigar-chomping old guys who looked at the product that came and said, I don't know. Who knows what it is? Record it, stick it out. If it sells, all right. We were better off with those guys than we are now with the supposedly hip young executives who are making the decisions of what people should see and hear in the marketplace.
Success in the music business begins with a dream, a vision. This podcast will give you, the listener, the insight and tools to turn that vision into a reality. Meet the industry professionals who work day by day behind the scenes, helping to make those dreams come true. Welcome to the business side of music.
All the way from Paducah, Kentucky originally, but a Nashville boy these days. Tim McDonald is with us. If you don't know who he is, we're going to tell you about it right now. Along with being a U.S. Army vet, Staff Sergeant, right?
That's correct.
All right. Thank you for your service.
Thanks, Bob.
Graduated with honors from the Armed Forces School of Music. You also performed in 2 Broadway plays, Aida.
Yep.
And the producers.
That's right.
You moved to Nashville. You started out as a session artist, I guess, and commenced as a focus as a singer-songwriter and pianist. And then you've been doing some touring, not only with your own acts, a country band and a jazz band, and I guess Bluegrass is in there somewhere.
That's kind of the new baby.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that a little bit.
Just conceived.
When he's not doing that, he's touring with an old buddy of mine that I used to tour with, Rick Derringer.
Rick Derringer.
He's also toured with Blake Shelton, Hank Jr., Olivia Newton-John, Pam Tillis, Mark Chestnut, Josh Grayson, Buddy Jewell, Steve Holy, another artist that I got to work with back in the late 90s. He's also had the honor to perform with one of my favorites, Larry Carlton. I guess you did that at a NAMM show one year.
Well, I did that. It was a fundraiser. It was kind of it wasn't NAMM, but it was it was a thing down at 3rd and Lindsley where they were raising funds for the kids.
But anybody gets to play with Larry Carlton.
That's true.
You know.
House band thing.
Yeah. And then if you recognize this guy, if you're watching the show, you might recognize him as the keyboardist on the TV series, ABC hit TV series, Nashville, as the keyboardist for Luke Wheeler, one of our favorite shows that my wife and I used to watch.
I love the show.
Yeah, great show.
Yeah.
You have some original songs that are in the Jerry Seinfeld's Comedian in Cars, Getting Coffee, and several movies, including The Perfect Fit. You have done 9 albums, 5 country, 4 jazz, and you're currently...
Now it's 11. Now you have the 10th and 11th in your hand right now.
We have the 10th and the 11th.
So you're
right
correct
here.
both ways, yes.
So we're going to talk about that. Tim, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Bob. It's a pleasure to be here, man.
That was a little bit of an introduction, but thanks for bearing with us.
That was a heck of an introduction. I appreciate it.
How did you get from Paducah to Nashville? Was it by way of the Army? Were you a musician growing up as a kid?
So I was. My father was a pastor. And so I say, I was born in Paducah, Kentucky, but he moved his church when I was 2 to Bedford, Virginia. So Virginia is kind of where I grew up.
Right.
But I call Paducah home. Every summer we were back visiting the family, and I still have a lot of family in Paducah, more than I do in Virginia. I always wanted to move to Nashville. It was either L.A., New York, or Nashville. And in 2004-ish, this was the most affordable place to go when I got out of the Army. So I decided to come to Nashville.
It's not that way anymore.
That is correct.
Not by a long shot. Was country music, bluegrass music, was that kind of what you grew up listening to? I mean, that's obviously a big transition to go from bluegrass and country to jazz, and then, as I mentioned, performing with Rick Derringer on the road.
Yeah, it's funny you asked that. My stepdad was 20 years older than my mom, so my dad died when I was 5. All right, my mom remarried a man that was 20 years older. He grew up during the Depression. This sounds like way back in the day, but he wouldn't let us listen to anything pop music. We couldn't watch R-rated movies. So I grew up with musicals, Till the Clouds Rolled By with, I think Dean Martin was in that, and Louis Armstrong. So I grew up with all the big band stuff. So I really loved the jazz music, the big band jazz music. But I grew up in the country, so I was surrounded by country music. And so I kind of loved the lyrics of country music, but I loved the melodies of jazz and the difficulty of the music. But I was classically trained as a piano player, and so I just kind of started composing when I was a kid, just started writing stuff and lyrics, and whatever came to my mind, I would just write it out, get it out of my system.
And I mean this completely as a compliment, so don't take it wrong. But you're a Heinz 57 musician all over the place, aren't you?
That's I go on any steak.
I mean, because you do a little bit of anything and everything. To be classically trained and listening to, big band music, and I get it. Count Basie, Duke Ellington, Benny Goodman. That style of music to me will always be there. It's always going to be great. But then to get into the bluegrass world and the country world, was there one particular genre that kind of stuck with you more than anything?
Well, I think my first love is probably jazz music. When I went into the Army band, jazz was the prominent music that you play for the retirees. You do a lot of functions, dinner functions, chain of commands for different, maybe one general's coming in, another one's going out, so they have a dinner function for them. Your jazz quartet or quintet or what is always playing. So you had to learn the standards, mostly Miles Davis, Coltrane, Joe Beam. We learned all kinds of Latin. I really got into Afro-Cuban music for a while. I recorded a record that's just salsa, piano, that kind of stuff. It's funny, when you come in the Army, I was enlisted as a piano player. I had to go through basic training, do everything that, you're a soldier first. And I asked to go to Germany, D.C., or Hawaii. You get three choices, and they sent me to Lawton, Oklahoma.
Of course they did.
So in Lawton, Oklahoma, what do you do? It was a labor of love. It was a great place to practice. North Texas, I found out, was in Denton. It was about 4 hours south of me, 3 or 4 hours, right near Dallas. And so I started studying with a teacher there named Dan Hurley. And so I got to fulfill my jazz stuff, and then I played in a country band for 4 years while I was stationed in Oklahoma. I also played with the University of Cameron, which is in Lawton, Oklahoma, and I was taking classes there. They would always bring these guest artists through, and one of them was Dan Hurley, my teacher. That's how I met him, and another one was a guy named Byron Berline. And Byron Berline brought his bluegrass band. And my brother and I had always loved bluegrass, but a piano is not a traditional bluegrass instrument.
No, it isn't, by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, which is strange because it is the original instrument for country music, And so Byron came with his band, and he played with the big band. So his band played 6 or 7 songs by themselves, and then they played with the big band, the college big band. We had 4 trumpets, 4 trombones, 4 saxophones. We had guitar, piano, grand piano, and a drum set and a bass. And Byron came to me, and if you don't know Byron Berline, he discovered Vince Gill, and he was one of the most recorded fiddle players of all time. And so he came over, and I was 20 years old, and he says, hey boy, you want to play with my band? And I said, Mr. Berline, I won't know what the heck I'm doing. And he says, well, I'll just point my fiddle bow at you. When I do, you play, and when I put the fiddle bow back, you stop playing. And so that's how I learned how to solo. And I found out that bluegrass versus jazz is just diatonic. If you want to go into theoretical aspects of music, it's more diatonic to the key, and jazz seems to float around all the notes that are around the key. So if you're in the key of C, which is all white notes, in jazz it seems like you're playing all the white note or all the black notes, but you're in the key of C.
Right.
But in bluegrass, you're playing all the white notes. And so I just found that out real quick, and if you play those weird notes, people look at you real funny.
You hit a wrong note there.
That's right.
Coming to Nashville, Tennessee, and did it take you long to kind of get into the circle of things, to get into, you performed and toured with a lot of people. How quickly was that journey to get there?
Well, it took a lot longer than I wanted it to. You know, they say it takes 10 years to become an overnight success here in Nashville. Luckily, it didn't take that long because I felt like I was completely prepared when I came here. But like you said, you do have to get in the circles. So I went to all the places I could and just started sitting in with bands. And you sit in 3 or 4 songs, you know.
Was this called kind of like a little lower Broadway type
It was
journey?
just lower Broadway, and also I was doing some stuff off of Broadway. But down there, it was easier to sit in because I found out if you go towards the end of the shift, people will let you sit in more than if you go to the beginning when they're just setting up.
Right.
And then so I would do that, and some of the piano players down there, you know, they played so many shifts. When I sat in and they found out that I could play, then they would go walking off for 45 minutes, you know, and I would just play. And I didn't mind at all, you know, because I'm learning a lot of tunes that I didn't, you know, the standards, you know, the Broadway, the country, you know, music
when we
standards.
say Broadway country, we're not talking New York Broadway, we're talking Nashville Broadway.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're talking, you know, Haggard, Waylon Jennings, Willie Nelson,
George Jones,
and then all of the new country, you know, the top 40 country. And so, but there's a list of songs that it seems like you walk to this day down on Broadway and hear Wagon Wheel and a bunch of other tunes like that.
It was interesting. My wife and I had a lunch meeting that we had to go to Friday afternoon. And one of the things we like to do when we have to go downtown somewhere is we'll always come back down lower Broadway and we'll lower the windows. And when you do that, you get to hear every live band, in every honky-tonk. And it's amazing because it's this huge cacophony of sound when you're going down lower Broadway. And we got around, I think it was 3rd and Broadway. We're sitting at a red light, and all of a sudden we hear this guitarist go into Van Halen's Eruption. And he did the whole solo before the band, you know, went into the song. And I thought, now that's a new one.
That's a new one.
That's a first time.
That's the late night band.
Yeah, but this was like at 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Okay. Yeah.
So, you know, I thought it was kind of interesting, but it shows that there's this wide dichotomy of music now on Nashville. It's not just the old boys or the old girls network. There's a lot of new stuff.
Absolutely, you know, and there's gospel, there's jazz clubs like the Wooten brothers have opened a club for Rudy, which was their brother that passed away. So there's a lot of, you know, especially with the influx of people coming in from L.A. and New York, you know, they're bringing their music stylings with them. So Nashville is becoming almost a melting pot of just every style of music. And to answer your last question, which I didn't quite get to, was when I moved here, I got lucky and I got in a band that was playing the Nashville Star, if you remember that show.
I do.
We were playing the after parties with a band called Jackson Hill. And so then now all the musicians, you know, from, Brett Michaels, who was one of the judges, and Phil Vassar was one of the judges, his band's coming in and asked me to sit in. And they thought I'd been there for years, but I hadn't. So it was kind of cool. So after a few months, you know, a lot of the artists come down and look for their musicians. So I pretty much started, you know, sitting in November, and about April the next year, Mark Chestnut's guys came and they picked me off the street and they said we'll try you out for a couple months and we'll see what happened. And so that's about how long it took. It probably took about 6 months, I guess.
That's quick around here.
It's pretty quick.
Yeah.
You know, and then everything just kind of took off after that, you know.
We're going to take a break, get a word in with one of our sponsors who we really appreciate. And when we come back, we're going to have some more conversation with Tim McDonald.
You're listening to the business side of music.
Hi, everyone. I'm Larry Butler, and I want to send you a free digital copy of my new book, The Singer-Songwriter Rulebook, 101 Ways to Help You Improve Your Chances of Success. That's right. Everything you need to know to launch your career as a singer-songwriter, all based on my 40 years in the live performance arena, and believe me, I've seen it all. In my book, you'll find the 10 things you have to deal with before even thinking about becoming a singer-songwriter performer. You'll also learn about the 5 things every singer-songwriter can do this weekend to make their live show better. 5 things I can guarantee that you are not doing already. Plus, there's tips on songwriting and staging, photo and video shoots, publishing, merch, dozens of other topics. all written for people who don't particularly like to read. And again, it's free. Just go to the Business Side of Music website homepage and look for my book cover. Click on it, and a free digital copy of my book will be yours. I'm Larry Butler, and I approve of this message.
What does it take to succeed in country music? Hi, this is Candy O'Terry, your host for Country Music Success Stories.
And this is JC Don Valeris, your Music City mentor. Our Nashville-based podcast takes you into the homes and onto the back porches of country music icons.
And the stories they tell us just might inspire you to make your country music success story come true.
Check out Country Music Success Stories on your favorite podcast platform.
And subscribe today.
You're listening to the Business Side of Music.
Hey, baby, you ready for the weekend? It's been a long week, hard as hell to feel free when all we do, it seems, is work and sleep. Now I'm gonna make some time for me and my honey, gonna spend a little bit of my hard-earned money. We'll head on down to the package store, stock up enough, no need to come back for more. It don't take much, you don't need a lot, just a little something, something make mama hot. Spanking bottom red, they gotta have you feeling running through my head. So hammer down, pedal to the lead with some spanking bottom red. Spanking bottom red, got me dancing around like a thoroughbred. I need a little point to grab.
Back in the studio, Tim McDonald's with us. Okay, I have to fast forward, so excuse me while I jump around here. Rick Derringer.
Yes.
Now, I had the opportunity. I was one of those guys that, you know, as a road manager, my phone would ring at 9 o'clock in the morning. At 9 o'clock at the night, I'd be on a plane going out to pick up a tour. And Rick was one of those. He was at that time touring with Edgar Winter, the White Lightning Tour, and we did Canada and we did Europe together. How is it to work with Rick? Because I've got my stories. Great guy, a lot of fun, and an amazing guitarist.
Yeah. I mean, what a humble, in my experience, one of the most humble, if I may say, badass guitar players on the planet.
You may say that.
And I played with some great ones, you know, and for you to work with them is amazing. And I think we had the connection there when we first started talking.
Yeah.
You know, which is awesome. Rick is, you know, I just ask him crazy questions just to spark some of the stories because, I mean, he's a walking rock and roll encyclopedia. And why he's not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't understand that either, because when you think about how he started, like with the McCoys and, you know, their history before he ever hooked up with, you know, Edgar Winter and doing his own thing. And, of course, you know, you got Rock and Roll Hoochie Coo and Free Ride. I mean, these were anthems of the early 70s.
Absolutely.
And, you know, Rick has set a benchmark that other guitarists aspire to. At least I believe so.
I do too. I think he's invented, you know, things that people are doing today. And not only did he do that, but he produced a lot of bands, you know, like Steely Dan, Weird Al Yankovic, Liv Tyler is his goddaughter. You know, so you get all these stories just by asking him. But when you travel with him, he's such a great guy. There's no stress. You know, he's there with you in sound check. A lot of, you know, musicians, when they're artists, I would say, we're all artists, I think. You know, if you're in the music business, you have to be.
We're at least creative souls.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, but most artists aren't there. You know, you do a little sound check, make sure. But Rick's out there. He'll go over what he wants to go over to make him feel comfortable. Then he's like, hey, you guys want to go over anything? Which I think is amazing. You know, we'll say, maybe we need to hit this section because, you know, this part I'm playing guitar. You know, I'm Frankenstein, and there's some little runs we do together, and I'm like, hey, man, would you mind going over this so I can tighten it up? I know you know it. You've played it for God only knows how many years, but for my sake, can we do this? And he's, sure, man, and we'll run over it a couple times.
I think it's because Rick Derringer is one of those people that just loves to play. He loves to perform, and I don't necessarily think it has to be in front of large crowds, a large, small, medium-sized audience. He just loves to get out and put on a great show.
Exactly. And he'll play a show like there's a million people there, even if there's not, you know. And luckily, all of our crowds have been great. You know, the band's called the New McCoys, and so he's kind of excited. He's got 3 guys from Nashville that are his bass band now. You know, David Northrup's the drummer, and he's the one that called me for the gig. And it's kind of funny, if you don't mind me mentioning this, when I talked to Rick, I was like, man, you know, what do you want me to play on some of these? There's not keyboard on all these songs, you know. And he's like, well, he says, I'll come in a day early. We had rehearsals in Murfreesboro,
right,
at drummer's house. And not to leave Steve Forrest out. Steve Forrest is a bass player on the gig. Anyway, he came to the house a day early, which I thought was crazy. So he's at my house, and then we're sitting in there, and I said, dude, do you mind if I play some guitar parts? He's like, well, what do you mean? I said, some of these songs, you know, you only have, you know, me and you know, are basically the rhythm section minus the drummer and the bass. You know, they have their stuff, but he's like, well, let me hear it. And so I grabbed my guitar out and I started playing all of the backing, you know, guitar parts. And he says, man, that's cool. Let's do it. And so I play more guitar on his shows than I do keyboard. You know, I play organ on, let's see, what's his big hit with the McCoys? Hang On Sloopy.
Hang On Sloopy, yeah.
That song, and then there's a couple of jazz, because he loves jazz, you know.
In fact, I heard him do, years ago, he came to where I was working at the record label, and he handed me a copy of Rock and Roll Hoochie Coo, but it was a jazz instrumental version. And I thought that was the coolest rendition of that song. Of course, being a big jazz buff doesn't hurt, but does he perform it that way, or is it still old?
He does it the traditional way. Everything's pretty much traditional, you know, but it's
what the audience wants to hear.
They do.
Yeah.
You know, and I think he respects that, and he's all about that. He knows what his purpose is, you know, and it's just an honor to work with a guy at that, you know. Just, I know he's had a lot of musicians, and he can hang up the towel anytime he wants to, but I don't think he will. And it's just it's amazing to be in, you know, because your playing can only get better playing with Rick.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
let's jump to the 4 seasons, not the band, but the 4 seasons of the TV series Nashville. You were the keyboardist for the character Luke Wheeler. 2 things. First of all, how did that come about? And second of all, honestly, what's it like to see yourself on the screen?
It's a drinking game.
Yeah,
because you don't get a whole lot as a musician. You know, you're just supporting the actors. But I got an email, and I actually had to turn it down, you know, the first time because I was so busy. And so they emailed me again several months later and says, hey, you want to, you know, be a piano player on the show Nashville? And I said, sure. And it was probably lucky that I did that, because you could be on a one hit show with the Tootsies band or something, you know. And so I went in with Luke, and Luke was dating Rain and James at the time.
Right.
And, you know, we all got together, and Sherry Gibson is the lady that hired me, whose husband is the producer at Opry. She says, well, you guys are going to be dedicated to this band. And so, but she says, we don't know if, you know, even Luke said, we don't even know if we're going to do 3 or 4 episodes. And then come to find out that him and, you know, Chip, who's Deacon Claiborne, had this huge rivalry going, and I guess the show loved it. And so we started backing up, because it was a Wheels Up tour. So we're backing up all these artists. 4 seasons later, you know, we're still going strong. And then, you know,
did you think you were going to last that long?
No. I thought, you know, maybe 1 or 2 shows, you know, and I was happy with that.
Because I've had friends on the show, one who was a drummer, another one was a backup singer, and they said, yeah, you know, we got in 1 or 2 episodes, and that was kind of it, and then the part just faded away. But the last 4 seasons on a show.
He lasted the entire time, you know, until the show got canceled, which I can't believe it did.
I can't either, but I will say this, not to interrupt,
sure,
but that show went out on a high mark when they ended it.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. They didn't overdo it. And I wanted them to make a show called Austin, because then they would have had 2 rivalry shows, you know.
Yeah.
But it was crazy. So the very last show I did, I got called, just like you always get called. You know, they call you and say, "Are you available?" And of course, I was on every episode with Luke Wheeler, which was great. Me and the drummer were the only two people that were on every episode, you know, with Luke Wheeler, which was pretty exciting that we could do that. But I showed up and they sent me the stems, you know, for the parts that I had to learn. That was one really cool thing they did was they cranked your piano parts up in the music so you could, you know, you could hear exactly what they're playing, because you, like me and you're the producer, you're watching my hands while you're playing the song. And if I play it wrong, you're like, let's do that again.
Right.
You know,
right.
So I got to get this stuff right if they show my hands or not. Well, I show up and it's a Bluebird set, and none of my colleagues are there. And I'm like, what's going on? You know, this is not usual. And Sherry says, well, you're gonna play the last episode with Deacon Claiborne. You're gonna be his piano player today. And so Rain had already been written off the script, and she was on a show called 911.
Right.
And so I was really excited to do this show, and we're in the Bluebird, you know, there doing the Deacon song. And there became a lull, and we at this point, after 4 years, we're all kind of good friends, you know. And I said, well, I think we should write something in. And Deacon says, well, what do you think you should write in? I said, well, I think you should go jump off the stage after your song and act like you twist your ankle, and we have to call 911, and you get Raina James on the line. And everybody started laughing. And so It was really cool doing that show. It was really sad to go, but...
Do you still stay in touch with those people?
I do. I stay in touch with all of them. It was pretty much Toby Keith's band with me. So, yeah, we all keep in touch. And a couple of us they called us back after the show was over to be on a movie called Patsy and Loretta Forever. And so we were in her 1972 band where she's singing Blue Moon of Kentucky. With her mentor Patsy Cline, you know, because Loretta Lynn's was pretty much her career got started, you know, by the help of Patsy Cline. And so, you know, Bob Moore that just passed away, he was in the audience. Byron House, who plays upright on my new piano bluegrass record, was there, you know, because we were doing the traditional Ryman stuff. And so it was pretty cool. So some things have come out of that, you know, as far as acting. I got to call up a couple other spots just playing church piano and Every Other Holiday, which is another movie that came out on Hallmark. Some of the stuff I've got to do is from the show and learning the parts. You know what I mean? I learned the parts just like the record, and the producers loved it. And so, you know, if you do your work and you, because it's not acting, you know, because that's what we do every day.
Yeah.
But you got to do your homework. You know, you can't just walk in there and say, well, I'm going to, you know, fiddle with this. Even if they don't, you know, half the time they never showed my hands. But every now and then they did.
We're going to take another break, get another word in for one of our sponsors. But as we do, as we fade out here, we're going to play a cut off of your Tim McDonald 10. And let's do Hot Chicken.
There you go, Hot
Chicken. As we go to the break here.
Walk down Lower Broad to see what was cooking. When something caught me by the eye, it was finger licking. Thick white meat I had to eat, thighs that blew my mind. Greasy curves that I could serve, so spicy I'd go blind. Baby, wanna shout? Hot chicken. Hot chicken. Hot chicken.
You're listening to the business side of music.
Whether you consider yourself a musician or not, music is all around us, and it affects our everyday lives. Whether it's background music influencing our shopping habits in a store, organ music adding the vibe to a baseball game, or a playlist convincing us to keep going on that last mile of a run. I'm Mindy Peterson, host of the podcast Enhance Life with Music, where we take a holistic look at music's benefits through the lens of science and medicine, entertainment, and business. us. You can find me and Enhance Life with Music at mpetersonmusic.com/podcast or wherever you get your audio.
You're listening to the business side of music.
Back in the studio here, Tim McDonald is with us. Along with everything else you've accomplished, and it's quite a bit, you, as we said, you now have 11 albums out.
11.
7 country, 5 jazz.
That's correct.
Yeah.
1 bluegrass.
I think my math. 6 country. Anyway, okay,
there's an elephant, a crow,
jazz,
and a tiger.
Oh, God, let me take my shoes and socks off. But you have 2 albums out. You have Highland Country, and then you have 10. Does one come before the other, or they both came out at the same time?
No, really. It's actually Highland County. And Highland County, it was what I call my pandemic album.
Okay.
Because all the
we
gigs
all
are
had
canceled.
One of those. Anybody that, stuck in the house had
you know
their
what
own
I'm talking
studio.
about.
Yeah.
You start, we're creative. I don't remember the term you said last episode, or the last segment, but it was something about we are all creative.
Yeah, we're all creative souls.
There you go, creative souls.
Yeah.
And so what I did was I'd always been trying to write bluegrass with Byron Berline, but he's so hard to pin down because he's so busy all the time. He lives in Guthrie, Oklahoma. In fact, I'm going out this week to play his festival. Anyway, so I just decided I'm going to send him, because he used to send me stuff to record. I've recorded on 5 of his records. And bluegrass.
Piano.
Yes, piano. He also uses drums. He uses different instruments. Basically, I got a great idea, and I said, maybe this will work. I don't know. So what I did was I wrote an entire song, and I did it in Pro Tools from front to finish with a click track. I would play the A section. I would leave the B section open, and then I would play the A section again, and then I'd leave a whole slew of solos for whoever wanted a solo. And then we would just repeat that, because that's kind of how you write jazz or bluegrass. You have a head, you have solos, the head, and then you're done, right? Right. I think we just gave you the songwriter's secret to jazz and bluegrass. And so I sent this and I said, Byron, I want you to play on this song, and we'll call it a co-write. You just play the B section, and he says, okay, that sounds good. So the first one I named Tim and Byron, and it was called TB, and I started laughing. I said, well, that also means tuberculosis. And so we started writing all these tunes, and we came up with all these Midwestern elements like lockjaw. We got Rocky Mountain Spotted Fever. We've got Jake Leg, which if you don't know what Jake Leg is, look it up. It's a fascinating story.
I'll have to look up Jake Leg.
With Jamaican ginger rum, and they were sending it out into the Midwest, and guys were waking up with this either paralyzed from their waist down, or they had this jack in their leg when they tried to walk, and it was called Jake Leg. And it was because they were putting tonic, this poisonous tonic, in this Jamaican rum, ginger, or whatever.
Let's hope they're not still doing that
exactly.
these days. Yeah.
They could be. They're putting that in our pesticides now. So anyway, I had this story about Highland County, Virginia, where I used to go hunting as a kid. Came up with this fictional story. The first song to the last song tells a story. It's called Highland County. It's Highland County, Virginia. In fact, I just sent records to their whole staff there at the courthouse, just because, I just had a lot of memories of that. Byron helped me the entire way, and then after we'd finished every note of our disease songs and Highland County, which is a whole separate album, he had a stroke, and he passed away on July 11th, and it just broke my heart, and I went out there, and Vince Gill went out there. We played his celebration of life, which had, I don't know, about 1,000 or so people there. But he was instrumental in this whole thing. And so Wednesday night, me and his band, it's called Byron Berline Band and Legacy, are playing that record that you have from front to end at the Fiddle Hall, which was his double stop fiddle shop. And then at the Oklahoma International Bluegrass Festival this coming Friday, we're playing the album again. And then I'm joining the band, as I did anytime that I could go out there.
And the music on this, are they all your original songs, co-writes? How did these come together? I mean, you explained the story, but did you pull anything that's traditional standard tunes, or is this something that you guys created together?
It's all original. I wrote them all myself on a zero-turn lawnmower. It takes me about 3 hours to mow my yard. I got a couple acres. I don't ever listen to music because that's when I get the most creative, because after 2 hours, your mind starts to wander. And so I had this story in my mind about a miner that saved his money. He's got a young kid and a wife. He buys 1,000 acres of land in Highland County. He's going to, provide for his young son and his wife. And this man named John Henry Butler comes along and he wants to buy the land. The dad says, get lost. Well, the man comes back and kills his dad in front of the son. The son vows revenge. Not only does he kill his father, but he tears down the house and moves the kid and the mom down the hill. And so the kid vows revenge to the mother that he's going to kill John Henry Butler. So he grows up. When he grows up, he finds him in the courthouse. John Henry Butler doesn't recognize him because he's a man now. Yeah. He puts one in between his eyes, last one he'll ever see, but he saw that, or the one he'll never see, but he saw that angel come and ride next to me. And then there's a song after that called Highland County where he's made his escape. He's writing his mother a letter with no return address because he didn't want to get caught by the law. Another one called Lightning, which he's on the run from the police. Well, they catch him, and then there's a song called The Gavel, and that's in front of the judge. And then there's Dead Man Walking, where they're leading him to the gallows. And then there's the Tyburn Tree, which is the old set of bones. It's traditional bluegrass, and it takes place in 1782, which is post-Civil War. This is all the stuff that I came up on my mind. And then after the Tyburn Tree, you have the Fields, which gives you the answer because he does get pardoned by the governor, but is it too late? So you have to listen to the last song to figure out if it's too late or not.
So what you have created is something that I have always liked, which is it's a musical journey. And when, in the old days when it was vinyl, you dropped the needle and from the first song to the last song, it took you on a trip. And that's really what this is what you're explaining here.
Absolutely. And I'm like you, when I first started making records, back in the early 2000s, when I was just about to get out of the Army, I made my first record. I remember buying albums as a kid. I didn't buy a whole lot of vinyl. I had CDs, but they all were, the Eagles' greatest hits.
Right.
And all these different Guns N' Roses, GNR, Appetite for Destruction, whatever, to country records, to jazz records. All these songs fit. Kind of Blue, Miles Davis, the most selling record of all time jazz. All the songs fit together. And then when artists started just throwing up stuff like spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks, and there was no cohesive, they're just throwing songs, and you didn't know who played on this stuff. You didn't know who wrote the stuff, and that's today. And so I was like, man, it's time to take a step back and go back to what a record was, which is telling a complete story from front to end, not just having a cohesive amount of songs that go together, because that's cool too, but actually having a story, whether if you listen to these out of order, it's not going to make that much sense.
And I love that because, like you said, you have written a musical book with many chapters, and each of those chapters carries you into the next chapter.
That's exactly, and I was talking to Byron House, who's one of Ricky Skaggs' bass players and also was in the Band of Joy with Robert Plant. He was like, man, he said they should make a movie or something out of this because he said it's just because we're doing all this email.
Yeah.
But he was starting to put the story together as we're recording it. We didn't record it in order, but I kind of explained to him a little bit. I didn't want to be too long-winded, but I explained this is what this song is about just to put you in the mindset of how we're going to play it. This one's going to be dark because he's going in front of the judge and he's going to, he's getting a death penalty, and he would come up with these bowing upright bass lines that are just, make your skin crawl,
So let me ask you this. When you started writing this album, did you write it in sequence, or did you say, okay, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna talk about the gavel, and then I got to start and I got to go back to off to the mine, or the fields, or were you writing these track by track in the proper order?
No, they were all out of order.
Yeah.
The first one I wrote was called Off to the Mine, and it was just kind of happy. I just visioned a bunch of guys, a bunch of instrumentalists just walking, some of them walk fast, some of them walk slow, some of them were talking, some of them had a bad night, they didn't get any sleep. And so it's just, it's kind of a loose collaboration of musicians playing this kind of Jollyful, Seven Dwarfs song, and that was the first one I wrote even before I had this idea to write this record. And I'm like, man, that's a great song to kick off the record because it's kind of like this, because I want it to get really dark. And so then I started, the first song came up was John Henry Butler. So those were the first two in succession, because I had to have the bad guy and I had to have the story. And then I think the Fields came somewhere later, which is the last tune, because I actually wrote it twice. Because in the original one, I had a different ending than I do, and I can't tell you that because I want you to listen to the thing. But I didn't. The ending was too happy. Let's just put it that way. So I wrote that one twice. When Barry Bones Patton, who is one of our world's greatest bones player, who's also Byron Berline's nephew, he came to my house. I'd never recorded bones, kind of like me and you in here. I put a microphone in front of him and said, just play those bones in here. I don't have any headphones for you, but I just turn up the music a little bit. There might be a little bleed through. And I said, man, we need a Tyburn tree. We need kind of like a drum roll for the gallows to fall. So click-a-de-click, click, click, click-a-de-click, click, click, click-a-de-click, click, 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 click. And he did that, and as he did it, he was walking closer to the mic, so it starts off where it sounds like he's far away. And I wanted it to be like the appearances the drummers are coming, and he does a roll at the end. And that's when the rope hits, and then we go right into the field. So that was kind of a song that wasn't even supposed to happen, but I'm like, let's do it. It was kind of like, you listen to these Star Wars stories or, these movies that they made, and some of the stuff they just made up on the spot because something happened, and they're like, oh, let's instead
ties it all together.
Yeah, tied it all together. So no, it was all out of order, but it all, in fact, I had to make sure it was all sequential and it made sense, because not all of them have lyrics. Some of them you have to get the vision just from the music. So
how can people find the music?
Okay, so the Highland County will be released October 1st, which is this coming Friday.
So by the time this airs, it'll be available?
Yeah, it'll be available. It'll be on Spotify. It'll be on iTunes, every available channel. Also through my website, which is timmcdonaldband.com. You can buy it there, or you find me on Facebook too. I've already had a huge pre-sale, which is pretty good. So you can get them in the digital form. I just ask if you get the, at least Highland County, just listen to it in sequential order so you can kind of get a better idea. Now, 10 is a different album altogether. That has co-writes. I did a couple of country versions. I like to countryfy some songs. Like in the time I was putting this record together, and it's still going on. There's a lot of insanity in the world. I said the world needs Don't Worry, Be Happy again. So I came up with this really cool honky-tonk version of Don't Worry, Be Happy. I came up with another country version. Let's see, what's the song? Bought my first real 6-string, bought it at the 5 and dime, played it till my fingers bled, summer of 69, right? So I did 2 of those, and then all the rest I either wrote myself or co-writes. There's 13 songs on the 10, and I call it 10 because it is my 10th album. And so that will be available, everywhere as well.
Thank you so much for being on the show. This was a wealth of
Thanks, Bob.
just great information.
Thanks for having me, man.
The Business Side of Music is the creation of Tom Sabella and Tracy Snow and is produced by Bob Bender. The Business Side of Music is recorded at Music Dog Studios in Nashville, Tennessee. Production sound design by Keith Stark. Voiceover and promo by Lisa Busan.
Daddy owned 1,000 acres on old Virginia Hill, tucked back in the orchards near the old sawmill. Said, son, one day you'll have it all when I'm dead and gone. Just promise me you'll tend to it and watch out for your mom. I was just a boy back then, but I won't forget that man, John Henry Butler, black hat, tall and thin. He kept on telling Daddy, I'll buy your land today. Dad said, over my dead body, now go about your way. And I think about them apple trees, old fences from the war, separated brothers, land worth fighting for. One day I'll get that land back. If it's the death of me, I'll kill John Henry Butler. Just you wait and see. Yes, I'll kill John Henry Butler. Just you wait and see. One day he pulled a pistol, Daddy fell onto the ground. I swear until my dying day I won't forget that sound. He tore down our old farmhouse and sent us down a hill. Mama, I swear that one of these days that bastard I will kill. And I think about them apple trees, old fences from the war, separated brothers, land worth fighting for. One day I'll get that land back. If it's the death of me, I'll kill John Henry Butler. Just you wait and see. Yes, I'll kill John Henry Butler. Just you wait and see. And I think about them apple trees, old fences from the war, the separated brothers, land worth fighting for. One day I'll get that land back. If it's the death of me, I'll kill John Henry Butler. Just you wait and see. Yes, I'll kill John Henry Butler. Just you wait and see.